How do we balance judgment with mercy, both in our personal lives and as a society? Can true faith exist without obedience, or does obedience deepen our faith? What roles do careful planning and flexible adaptation play in pursuing our hopes and renewal after setbacks? Why is respect for life foundational to our ethical choices, and how does it influence our relationships with others? How does remembering our covenants and shared history shape our identity and guide our actions today? Today, we'll be covering a lot of ground, Genesis 5 through 9. I've decided to include all the chapters that cover Noah and the flood, instead of breaking them down into chapters. Most of us know this story by heart. I'll cover the concepts first, and after the reading, we'll look at how to use this story for problem solving. The Noah story is a tapestry of interconnected themes: judgment and mercy, faith and obedience, planning and adapting, hope and renewal, respect for life, and the importance of covenant and memory. Together, these concepts provide not only theological insights, but also enduring wisdom for how you can face profound challenges, recover, and build a better future. The flood is depicted as a response to pervasive human wickedness and violence. This presents a theme of divine justice, that actions have consequences, and unchecked evil invites correction. Humanity is described as wicked. Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Even in judgment, God's mercy is evident. Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Noah is singled out as blameless and walked with God. God keeps only a single type each of his original creation: Noah, his family, the animals, all indicating that destruction is not total. Renewal is possible. These themes reflect a balance between justice and compassion, essential in ethical and legal systems as well as theology. Noah's actions are characterized by meticulous obedience. He does all that God commanded him. This emphasizes action, not just belief, that faith is demonstrated through concrete, persistent steps, often in the face of uncertainty or social opposition. Noah's adherence to these instructions is repeatedly emphasized. Noah trusts God's word about events not even seen yet. There's a leap of faith in building an ark before any sign of a flood. This addresses the relationship between trust, action, and outcomes, central in both religious and secular settings. God's instructions for the ark are detailed and practical: dimensions, materials, entry of animals, provisions for food. There's an emphasis on preparation for a known challenge. Noah is tasked with preserving biodiversity to keep their kind alive. This links to the earlier theme in Genesis of humanity as caretakers of creation. These concepts underscore the importance of rational planning, resource management, and responsibility for the environment and future generations. Noah must respond to changing circumstances, waiting for the flood to subside, sending out birds to assess the environment, discerning the right time to exit the ark. The story underscores waiting, not acting prematurely, but discerning the right moment for change. This mirrors real-life challenges. Situations often require patience, experimentation, and willingness to adapt to new information. The ark becomes a vessel of hope, carrying life through chaos. After the flood, There's a new beginning, a recreation, copying Genesis 1. God blesses Noah and his family, giving the same command as in creation. Be fruitful and multiply. This reflects the resilience of life and the possibility of starting anew after a catastrophe. New rules are instituted. Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. Humans may now eat animals, but must not consume blood, symbolizing the respect for life. These are foundational for later ethical frameworks about the sanctity of life, justice, and human responsibility. God establishes a formal relationship with Noah and all living things, promising never again to destroy the earth with a flood. The rainbow is given as a sign of this covenant. The rainbow functions as a visual reminder for both God and humanity of the promise and the lessons learned. Covenant is a central biblical concept, shaping ideas of trust, responsibility, and divine human partnership. Memory aids like the rainbow are crucial for sustaining moral commitments over generations. This story explores the depths of human potential for both corruption and righteousness. It reflects how humans can respond to divine guidance or moral imperatives. The preservation of species and stewardship of creation have modern ecological resonance. It's a model for surviving and recovering from catastrophe. And the post-flood laws lay a groundwork for justice, human dignity, and the limits of violence. I won't be covering all of chapter 5 because the majority of it is the genealogy to get from Adam to Noah. I will highlight a few verses. The generations of Adam, chapter 5, verse 1 and 2. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day when God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. He created them, male and female, and he blessed them and named them man in the day when they were created. Verse 24. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Verse 29. Now he called his name Noah, saying, This one will give us rest from our work and from the pain of our hands, arising from the ground which the Lord has cursed. Verse 32. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Chapter 6. Now it happened when men began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were good in appearance, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. When the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he indeed is flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then the Lord saw that the evil of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. And the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land, from man to animals, to creeping things, and to the birds of the sky, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among those in his generations. Noah walked with God, and Noah became the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. Then God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence because of them, and behold, I am about to destroy them with the earth. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. You shall make the ark with rooms, and you shall cover it inside and outside with pitch. Now this is how you shall make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits, its breadth, 50 cubits, and its height, 30 cubits. You shall make a window for the ark, and complete it too, 1 cubit from the top, and set the door of the ark in the side of it. You shall make with it lower, second, and third decks. As for me, behold, I am bringing a flood of water upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, in which in the breath of life from under heaven everything is on the earth shall breathe its last. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark, you and your sons, and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every kind into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the birds after their kind, and of the animals after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind. 2 of every kind will come to you to keep them alive. As for you, take for yourself some of all food which is edible, and gather it to yourself, and it shall be for food for you and for them." Thus Noah did, according to all that God had commanded him. So he did. Then the Lord said to Noah, "Enter the ark, you and all your household, for you alone I have seen to be righteous before me in this generation. You shall take with you of every clean animal by sevens, a male and his female, and of the animals that are not clean, 2, a male and his female. Also of the birds of the sky by sevens, male and female, to keep their seed alive on the face of all the earth. For after 7 more days, I will send rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and I will blot out from the face of the land every living thing that I have made." And Noah did according to all that the Lord had commanded him. Now Noah was 600 years old when the flood of water came upon the earth. Then Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him entered the ark because of the water of the flood. Of clean animals and animals that are not clean, and birds and everything that creeps on the ground, by twos they came to Noah into the ark, male and female, as God had commanded Noah. Now it happened after the 7 days that the water of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on this day all the fountains of the great deep split open, and the floodgates of the sky were open. Then the rain came upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. On this very day, Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons were with them, entered the ark. They and every beast after its kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, every fowl, every winged creature. So they came to Noah into the ark by twos of all flesh, which was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, entered as God had commanded him, and the Lord closed it behind them. Then the flood came upon the earth for 40 days, and the water multiplied and lifted up the ark, so that it rose above the earth. And the water prevailed and multiplied greatly upon the earth, and the ark went on the surface of the water. And the water prevailed more and more upon the earth, so that all the high mountains under all the heavens were covered. The water prevailed 15 cubits higher, and the mountains were covered, and all the flesh that moved on the earth breathed its last, that is, birds and cattle and beasts and every swarming thing that swarms upon the earth, as well as all mankind. All those whose nostril was the breath of the Spirit of life, of all that was on the dry land, died. Thus he blotted out everything that was upon the face of the land, from man to animals, to creeping things, and to the birds of the sky, and they were blotted out from the earth. And only Noah remained, and those that were with him in the ark. And the water prevailed upon the earth 150 days. Then God remembered Noah, and all the beasts, and all the cattle that were with him in the ark. And God caused a wind to pass over the earth, and the water subsided. Also the fountains of the deep and the floodgates of the sky were closed, and the rain from the sky was restrained, and the water receded from the earth, going forth and returning. And at the end of 150 days, the water decreased. In the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat. Now the water decreased steadily until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains appeared. Then it happened at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent out a raven, and it went out flying back and forth until the water was dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove from him, to see if the water was abated from the face of the land. But the dove found no resting place for the soul of its food. So it returned to him into the ark, for the water was on the surface of all the earth. Then he stretched out his hand and took it and brought it into the ark to himself. Then he waited yet another 7 days, and again he sent out the dove from the ark. And the dove came back to him toward the evening, and behold, in its beak was a freshly picked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the water was abated from the earth. Then he waited yet another 7 days, and sent out the dove, but it did not return to him again. Now it happened in the 601st year, in the 1st month, on the 1st of the month, the water was dried up from the earth. Then Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the surface of the ground was dried up. In the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dry. Then God spoke to Noah, saying, Go out of the ark, you and your wife, and your sons wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing of all flesh that is with you, birds and animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth, and that they may be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth, went out by their families from the ark. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled the soothing aroma. And the Lord said to himself, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth, and I will never again strike down every living thing as I have done. While all the days of the earth remain, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. And the fear of you and the terror of you will be on every beast of the earth, and on every bird of the sky, with everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea, into your hand they are given. Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. As with the green plant, I give all to you. However, flesh with its life, that is, its blood, you shall not eat. Surely I will require your lifeblood. From every living thing I will require it. And from every man, and from each man's brother, I will require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man this blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. As for you, be fruitful and multiply. Swarm on the earth and multiply in it. Then God spoke to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, As for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the cattle, and every beast of the earth with you, of all that comes out of the ark. even every beast of the earth. Indeed, I establish my covenant with you, and all flesh shall never again be cut off by the water of the flood, and there shall never again be a flood to destroy the earth. Then God said, "This is the sign of the covenant which I am giving to be between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all successive generations. I put my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a sign of a covenant between me and the earth. And it will be, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow will be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And never again shall the water become a flood to destroy all flesh. So the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." And God said to Noah, "This is a sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." Now the sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was scattered abroad. Then Noah began to be a man of the land, and planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and became drunk, and uncovered himself inside his tent. Then Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took the garment, and laid it upon their shoulders, and walked backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were turned backward, so that they did not see their father's nakedness. Then Noah awoke from his wine, and he knew what his youngest son had done to him. So he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers." And he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." And Noah lived 350 years after the flood. So all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Quickly, let's go through the problem solvings from Noah's story. Identify and define the problem. Gather input and formulate a solution plan. Prepare and execute the solution with faithfulness and diligence. Monitor results and adapt as the situation evolves. Conclude and restore normalcy. Reflect and give thanks. Establish safeguards to prevent reoccurrence. Genesis 6 through 9 teaches not only theological truths, but also practical wisdom about facing and solving crises, recognizing problems, planning faithful action, adaptability, restoration, and prevention. My thoughts. One of the major differences between religions and even Christian denominations pertain to dietary laws. My feelings are this. Adam was restricted to a vegetation diet. Noah was released from this restriction after the flood. I believe for all mankind this still holds true. When Moses was given the dietary laws for the Hebrews, I firmly believe that was for the covenant with Israel. As a Christian, I believe this is where the divergence begins. Beginning with Abraham, we see a separation of the rest of mankind, and a singular race to be an example for the rest of mankind. In simpler terms, imagine you're a horse breeder. You gather together a herd of horses that have been in captivity. If you just let them loose into the wild, they really wouldn't know how to survive. When they have foals, they will teach them what they already know, what to be fearful of, whom to trust, etc. They have the mentality of captured creatures, which is not easily broken. To form a new mentality of freedom, you would change their day-to-day existence. You would implement rules and boundaries based on a life of freedom. Underscoring They don't need to be reliant on outside forces. Freedom is based on internal knowledge. The Bible is about freedom, freedom from slavery. From Abraham to Jesus is an example of how, if we don't guard our freedom, we will fall into slavery over and over again. Slavery to outside influences, whether it comes from the governments or just evil itself. Slavery is a mental condition more than a physical one. Exercising self-restraint is freedom. We have seen this over and over again in the first few chapters. God gave us freedom to choose. If you feel the need to follow dietary restrictions, that's your right. However, that restriction was in the covenant for Israel. The 10 Commandments predate this covenant, as we have already covered. The 10 Commandments are all you need unless you're part of the covenant. Because they fell into slavery, he gave them specific rules to teach them a new way of life. But they still fell into slavery, this time to dietary laws and archaic rules, believing that the way to God is rituals instead of a personal connection. We should follow the example of Israel in the scriptures, but remember, they are to learn from, not be them. I'm Merrill, and this is Battlegram. If you received any value from this episode, please share and subscribe. Join me for the next episode to continue this story.